Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast presented by Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. We are part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Today, our guest is Luke Wyatt. We will be talking some football, a couple of prominent Commodores in the transfer portal now, as well as some basketball after Vanderbilt won a close game with Wofford over the weekend. Luke appears on our guest line. That is presented by Michael Kendrick of the Kendrick Group. Michael is a local carpenter and a lifelong Vanderbilt fan. He builds bookshelves, cabinets, picture frames, furniture, and made-to-order items, including a display case for my prized Dale Murphy jersey. I've seen Michael's work. He's a true craftsman. If you find yourself in the market for custom woodwork, give Michael a call or text that number 615-830-9458. Tell him you heard about his company here. Now on to our interview with Luke Wyatt. Luke Wyatt joins us. It is Monday morning, December the 5th. Lots going on. The transfer portal opened today. Ray Davis made an announcement he would hit it last night. Mike Wright has hit the transfer portal just moments before we started the podcast this morning. Those will be prominent topics on the show today, maybe some hoops also. Luke, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being with us on a busy time of the year for everyone.
Yeah, I love being here, and it is a busy time of year for everyone. I got a little of my Christmas shopping done, and I'm ready to roll this morning. So let's get into it.
Well, and before we do, special request here. Blake Lovell is one of my good friends. He's worked at our site before in the past. He's my partner on the SEC stuff. His grandfather passed this weekend. I know you're very close to that family, and so just a start by requesting those of you who do pray, keep the Lovell family in your prayers, please.
Absolutely.
Okay. Vanderbilt running back Ray Davis has hit the portal. I was in contact with someone on the staff last night, told that one was expected. The issue, apparently Ray could not get into grad school at Vanderbilt, and just as a pet peeve, I try to stay out of these, and I'm big on freedom of speech and letting people say what they want, whether it's something I agree with or something I think is totally dumb. But these are 20-something-year-old players. I don't know if I want to use the word kid. Sometimes that's a little disrespectful. But Ray Davis is a guy who has my ultimate respect. Ray is a guy who had parents who were incarcerated for a while, I believe. He was homeless. He worked his way into a scholarship at Temple, transferred to Vanderbilt, suffered a really bad injury. By the way, he was playing last year with an injury in fall camp, played through it into the season before it became too much to play through. Ray absolutely answered the bell every game this year. Now, sometimes it didn't go so well. Ray had his limits. He wasn't the fastest guy in the world, but he could block, he could catch passes. He seemed like a team-first guy. The staff often, you can tell what it thinks of a player by who it puts in front of the media. Ray was in front of us a good bit. I thought Ray played hard. Ray played through pain. Ray was durable. No, Ray was not blessed with top-end speed, but that's beyond his control. I just have so much respect for Ray Davis and who he is, the way he conducted himself, the way he played. And I know some fans were taking the opportunity on social media and on boards here and there to downgrade him. I hate that kind of stuff. I have a lot of admiration for Ray Davis and wish him the best wherever he lands.
Well, I echo those statements and then some. I can tell whoever is being critical of Ray, first of all, you don't know what you're talking about, because I think Ray wanted to stay. I don't know that for sure, and I don't want to speak for Ray, but I think there's just still some issues with grad school that I don't know the ins and outs, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone at Vanderbilt, but I just feel like there's got to be a smoother transition for our kids to get into grad school. I don't know what that can be. But anyway, I think Ray didn't leave on his own accord. That's my opinion. Secondly, if you think we'd have won 5 football games without Ray Davis, you're sadly mistaken. Ray was one of the toughest kids that's ever been at Vanderbilt. And there's been a bunch of them that I would put in that category, 20 or 30, and he fits into that over all the years I've been around Vanderbilt. If you can't say anything bad about a kid like Ray Davis. He is a survivor, is the way I put it. And I wish him nothing but the best wherever he lands.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on all that. Mike Wright is the other one. I'm not completely shocked, I guess. I think Vanderbilt's a better football team with Mike Wright next year, but A.J. Swan has been their guy for a while. It's been rather obvious. I still think Mike has some deficiencies in his passing game that are going to prevent him from being the kind of quarterback he probably needs to be a top-flight SEC quarterback. But he was a preseason team captain. He's played a lot of good football at Vanderbilt, and I also wish Mike Wright the best.
Yeah, I do too. But I'm not surprised that Mike's gone. I think Mike was frustrated with the fact of, okay, we won 2 SEC games with me as the starter, and then people are clamoring for AJ to come back. You know, I get that, putting myself in Mike's shoes, although I do agree, excuse me, that AJ is our best chance to win football games in the totality of things. My biggest concern now is who's the backup, and who will that be? Will that be Dickey? Is Ken Seals? What's his situation? Are we going to get someone through a portal? Or the freshman coming in? I don't know. That's my biggest concern. We have to have a solid number 2. This year, we had a little bit of a luxury with Mike and AJ, but that's something you have to have, especially considering AJ's had his 2 concussions and he's not as mobile as most quarterbacks, and he could miss some time again next year for that same reason.
Yeah, I know that Vanderbilt has had some other players announce they're coming back, Justin Ball being one of them. Some other players who have not really announced anything. You've had some normal attrition guys who weren't going to play, that are either getting out of football or maybe moving on to somewhere else, I would presume, at a lower stop on the football food chain. What do you expect to happen from here on with the portal in Vanderbilt?
This is the world we live in now. It's new to Vanderbilt. It's new to everyone. I was looking last night at on Rivals at the portal. There was like 151 kids at the very beginning, and I'm thinking to myself, what? Like Miami had looks like the entire defensive backfield's transferring because there was like 4 or 5 defensive backs gone from Miami. So are they leaving because of that coach? Are they leaving because of the defensive coordinator? Who knows? There's just a myriad of reasons that these kids want to leave. And I think it's just so unpredictable of what will happen at Vanderbilt or what will happen at Tennessee or what will happen at Alabama. I don't think anyone knows. There's kids out there that I know we're going to go after. I can't say who they are that I'm excited about. And I expect us to have a couple of more that may hurt us that leaves. But at the same time, I just feel like the portal is so unpredictable that no one really knows how it's going to go down.
Well, look, you're seeing all kinds of crazy stuff this morning. Notre Dame and Clemson have lost starting quarterbacks. They're both playing in major bowl games. Speaking of coaching transfer portal, you had a Louisville coach flip to Cincinnati this morning when they're playing each other in a bowl game. I think this is the time where, this is all sort of necessary, all the things with the portal and things were, in a lot of ways, and players getting paid, were things that I think in some ways needed to happen. I don't like the totality of all of it and just the randomness of all of it and just the guys switching schools before bowl games and all that stuff. I mean, the NCAA really should have managed this better long ago. I hope we have a better future for college football because I just don't like the place it's in right now, although I do think it seems to have created a little more parity.
Well, again, I'm going back to blaming the NCAA. I've never been a big fan of the way they're structured, and they knew this was coming. Everyone knew it was coming. And my thing is, let's have a plan in place when it does come. It's one of those things of like, okay, you're being warned that a tornado's coming, and you don't take the proper precautions. It's the same thing, and the NCAA moves at such a snail's pace on everything. We haven't even heard yet. I don't hear no talk about what's going to happen with Tennessee's violations. Why does that take so long to sort out? We already know what has happened. Why do those things take so long? I don't get it. I don't understand it. Never will.
Yeah, we're what, 5 years after the LSU thing broke?
Yeah. I mean, and there's no excuse for that. I'm sorry. I don't know if they just think it's going to go away or what. I don't know. But there's a lot of, and I had a friend that worked for a long time in the NCAA, and I used to bend his ear a bunch about it. And he said, well, Luke, there's processes you don't understand. There's so much red tape and legalities that we can't do things without being sued and this and that. And I said, well, something has to change because it's not working.
Yeah. It's just has never been a visionary organization. And I blame the NCAA for when the hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars were exchanging hands, and they sat on this notion that we don't owe the players anything, and if somebody takes a $25 steak dinner, we'll use that as a means to put the school on probation. Just the bookends of the way the NCAA was stingy and capricious with its processes just are part of the reason we are where we are.
Let me give you a perfect example of an NCAA thing that happened while I was in Vanderbilt, and your jaw.
Is this the basketball parking passes?
No. This is a lot more petty than that. Beth DeBush, who was at Vanderbilt, she was the commissioner, I think, of the OVC at one time. I'm not sure her title. But anyway, Beth was at Vanderbilt in compliance. And great lady. I'm not blaming Beth here. I'm blaming the NCAA because she's just, instituting the rules. She comes to the window on game day mornings, just so people kind of set a picture here. We have a huge bank type window that we undid, and then we had stuff sitting in the window for the kids, like the strips, the towel strips. They had chewing gum, a little bit of candy, stuff like that when they walked in for the game. Well, one morning she's out there when the team's coming in off the bus, and I'm standing at the window, and she said, Luke, do you know, does women's soccer get this type of treatment? I said, what do you mean? And she do they get chewing gum and candy at the window on their game days? I said, well, they're not. It's totally different. They don't even have a locker room where they're issued. They just have a locker room. Everything's in their lockers. Oh, well, we may have to stop giving this to the football players if we're not giving this to women's soccer as well. So it's a violence. So, right. That's how asinine some of the stuff was. Just ridiculous.
Well, the two defenses I do have for the NCAA is that the rules are set by membership. And so for teams and schools to vote for things and then to not abide by those rules is hypocritical, and especially for the presidents who have input when they've got coaches they know are cheating. And to stand by and watch it happen is one thing. And the other thing is, of course, the NCAA in a large way does have its hands tied by Title IX too.
They do.
But anyway, we could talk a long time on that. What are the chances you think Vanderbilt loses other needed pieces to its roster to the portal between now and next season?
Oh, I think there's a good chance. But not just Vanderbilt. I think all 14 teams in the SEC, and across the country, all 131, you're going to see things happen that you're going to be shocked about. Just like I'm a little shocked why the Notre Dame quarterback's gone, Drew Pine, and that one. They just it does. There's such a myriad of reasons for them to leave now. That, if one little thing can go wrong, they're out, and I just think it's unsafe. It's, and I don't want to be an old curmudgeon and say it's ruining college football, but it certainly isn't helping it the way I look at it. And I think this bowl season you're going to see even more so. You know, you got the kids that set out bowl games for, you know, that have a chance to go pro and so forth. But with the transfer portal and so forth, you don't even know who you're going to. You may have 30 less people if you're taking on your bowl trip from a team.
Right. It's just a disaster right now. And I don't know I don't know what, if anything, could be done with the timelines. The tampering is another issue. I just don't think you're going to stop the tampering either.
That's not going to stop. Tampering's been going on just like the money exchanging hands since the 70s. You know, in fact, it was worse with the money thing back in those 70s and 80s, in my opinion. But yeah, they're not going to be able to stop that. No.
So you're telling the stories with the money changing hands back before NIL and stuff were not, in your opinion, overblown.
I saw it. I actually saw it with my own two eyes on several occasions.
Okay, give me examples without naming names.
Well, let me tell you the schools. I saw it when I was on a visit to Norman, Oklahoma. We were playing Oklahoma in football, and I got out there 2 days early. Just happened to be at a function and at a restaurant and a coach's show, radio show, and saw some things happen. I saw it at University of Tennessee, and that was because a friend had tipped me off on when it was going down. I saw it at the University of Florida when I was down there. This was when I was young and I could go early and didn't have to rely on going with the team before I was working full time. And so that's just three. And I'm sure if I saw three randomly, how much it went on.
This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast has been made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville. Just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. What people love about Jody's office is the ambiance. It's relaxing. It's friendly. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. Whether your needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody today. Call him 615-270-2322. See him at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown or the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player and a huge Commodore booster, so go and talk Vandy sports with him while you're there. Go see Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of this podcast, because without it, this season would not be possible. How much of an issue was it at Vanderbilt when you were there? And was it an issue sometimes with particular coaches and not others?
All I heard of rumors of coaches, again, in the 70s and 80s, but I never saw it. And that's strange because I was there every day. But all that stuff goes on usually on the road at a restaurant or a function or a kid's home, that type of thing. You know, I don't know if you remember the story of Hartley Dykes.
Yes.
Okay. Rick George, who was at Vanderbilt, who's now the AD at Colorado, who just hired Deion Sanders. Rick told me every detail about what went on with Hartley Dykes because he was in the middle of it. He, at the time, was a young GA, and he had been told he's the bag man. And he didn't know any difference. Now, he took a bad rap for it, but you know as well as I do, if you're 20 years old and your first job, you're going to do what the head coach tells you to do. And he had to meet someone. Well, I'm not going to say, I better stop. But I don't want to incriminate you, make Rick look bad when it wasn't his fault, really. But anyway, yeah. I'll tell you this. That's how coaches did it. They would use someone else so where if they got caught, that person would get thrown under the bus and they would look like, oh, I had no idea this was going on. One of the world's best at that was Barry Switzer.
There's a detour here. I know what it was. Speaking of Colorado, what did you make of the Deion Sanders hire, and will that one work?
You know, it's funny. And again, I know Rick really well. Great guy. I love Rick George. Rick is a go-getter, high-energy guy, and I think it's a good match for him. Now, will Dion be a match for Colorado? I don't know. I don't know. And coming off the Carl Durrell hire, it's you talking about completely different. It's usually what happens in football is you go from one type of hire to another, like we did with Franklin to Mason and that type of thing. So, I think it'll be one of those sugar rushes, like we had with James Franklin. I think it could be that type of thing.
Yeah, it looks like he already announced his son as the starting quarterback, which seems like an odd way to do things.
Listen, I think.
Where could that go wrong, right?
Listen, there's a lot of odd ways he does things, I'm sure.
Yeah. Back to Vanderbilt football, the portal, signing day coming up. Any prevalent thoughts there before we move on to hoops for a minute, and then, of course, we'll hit the mailbag.
No, like I said, it's just so unpredictable. I don't want to make any predictions about it. I do think there'll be a couple of more hits to us, but I also think we're going to benefit from it. Now, we won't know that probably for a while or maybe during spring ball or that type of thing, but I think we're going to benefit from other people's problems and departures, just like we're going to lose a few. So it's basically just playing a game of cards, and hopefully you wind up with the best hand. That's what you're looking at.
Okay, to the latter, is that knowing something that you can't come clean on, or is that just a gut feeling?
Well, no, that's not. That's knowing of two or three things that I can't come clean on. However, when I say that doesn't mean I know who's leaving. That means I know who probably comes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I can tell what cards we may be dealt, but I'm not sure what cards we're losing.
Okay, fair enough. You want to move on to hoops?
Sure, let's talk hoops, yeah.
Were you at the Wofford game? I was not. My kids both had ball games Saturday, so I was kind of watching the box score for a while, and then I watched most of the second half. Wofford nearly beat LSU, a week or two ago.
Right.
In my mind, Liam Robbins is his team's best player, and he makes up for some weaknesses for sure.
Well, I think with the Wofford game, styles make the game, and Wofford, and when we played St. Mary's and people like that, I don't think those are good matchups for Vanderbilt. I just don't. Vanderbilt needs to play a team like Temple, that style, and I just think that without Jordan Wright for sure, you saw how poorly he played with his back injury the game before against VCU.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree with setting Jordan. He's not going to help us until he's 100%. So I was happy just to win the game, honestly. There's one kid that I'm high on. I don't know if you are or not, but I really like Paul Lewis. I think he's going to help us when he gets back. And I think I think this game coming up with Pitt Wednesday is huge. And the reason I say that is I thought going into the season, you predict wins and losses, and I feel like we needed to go 9-4 in non-conference. So that being the case, we need to win the last 5. NC State and Pitt, I think, are the two biggest threats to that not happening. So I think Pitt is one of those must-wins.
Yeah, I'm looking at Ken Palm right now, and it's not a really pretty picture of what's happened. Vanderbilt is, let's see, it's got 2 losses to 2 teams outside the Ken Palm top 100. One Southern Miss, which has moved up to 180. The other is VCU. No, Ken Palm builds in a good bit of preseason bias. I think that starts to weed out, I want to say, after 10 games. That's from memory. That's not me saying that as a fact, so I could be wrong, and it could change from year to year. Of course, St. Mary's and Memphis were also losses. Both those were double digits. Memphis is 25. St. Mary's is 27. Best win so far at Temple, which is 92 in Ken Palm. Of course, that came on the road in overtime.
And they just turned around and beat VCU, who we lost to. So, it just –
yeah.
And I watched the Ole Miss-Memphis game Saturday night, and I think Memphis has a chance to be really good. I really do.
That's an old team that can defend.
Yeah, it is. I like their makeup, and they play hard. They play really hard. They remind me of a poor man's Houston, I guess would be the way I'd put it.
Yeah, Houston may be the best team in the country, by the way.
Well, they get after it. I watched their game against St. Mary's the other night, and St. Mary's stayed with them for a long period of time, just because, again, of style of play. But Houston's tough. They're really good. They defend. They challenge every shot.
Did you get a chance to watch the Jerry Stackhouse debacle in Richmond?
I saw it. I was here's my take on it, Chris, and then you can tell me yours. I get frustrated. You know, I've even said this on the show about football and basketball and all the time better. People think it's sour grapes or whatever, but I know for a fact that there's a bias against Vanderbilt, and not just Vanderbilt. A lot of schools like a Vanderbilt that happens. It just does. And then I hear that one of those referees is one of Calipari's buddies that he paid to go on a trip to the Bahamas with him or something silly like that. The fact that the NCAA lets that go on is ridiculous too. But anyway, I think Jerry just took it one step too far, in my opinion. I had no problem with him getting technical. I think it was time for him to stop, like he said, the foolishness. It was ridiculous the way they were letting them be handsy, and we couldn't be handsy. And then the crap with the tapping the head, calling it that. You see guys turn cartwheels nearly after making dunks and making all kinds of gestures. To call that on a kid who basically got fouled, he got an elbow in the head when he dunked it. It should have been an and one, and then you assume that what he's doing, which he admitted was the little tap on the head means I just dunked on your head. I get that, but to call it technical and him the official that's back at midcourt, you know, to me he's looking for stuff. And getting back to Jerry's meltdown, I think that again, the one technical fine, but then stop it. That's it. You've made your point. You've cussed the guy out. He gets it. And then turn your back and walk back to the bench. And because those 6 points wound up possibly being the difference of the game.
Yeah, my issue, and I see it both ways. I don't blame Jerry Stackhouse for being mad. And I don't remember seeing it. I was a little distracted right when all that went down. I had something else going on, and there was, I think one of his complaints was that there was some carrying on the other end of the floor that was worse than what Vanderbilt did. And if that was, I'm sorry.
A lot worse.
Okay, well, and if that's the case, I don't blame him for being mad. Second thing, and this is where my thing with him all along has been putting in the time and being prepared. Again, that was a point of emphasis in the offseason. I question how much that had been hammered home to his team. Maybe that's unfair. But when something's a point of emphasis, you need to make sure your kids are prepared. So, a letter of the law, I don't blame him for calling the technical. Now, I have heard it said, and I've said this on another show, officials can also give a warning in that situation. I mean, it's been done at other places, and I think, frankly, under the circumstances, that was the right call. Now, 8 FUs and the ensuing debacle was completely unwarranted, and you look back and you wonder if he could have had some self-control, does the game end a little differently?
Yeah, that's my whole thing. And I understand you when your emotions. Trust me, I've been there just as an equipment manager.
And sometimes you need that. You need that from your coach at times. You need a guy that will fight for you and stand up. And in that respect, I don't blame Jerry for it.
No, I don't either. I've seen Nate Oates do the same thing at Alabama. I've seen Musselman do it at Arkansas. You know, do the same type thing where they just dog cuss a referee and get double technicals and get tossed. So I've seen it. It hurt us more because it was such a tight game the other night, and like I said, it could have made the difference. But you know, I guess my problem, you going back to what you said, they usually give a warning. I see it all the time throughout a game. An official whether he's handing the ball to the kid to inbound it or whatever after a play, they'll whisper in their ear to not to do something, or they'll tell them as they walk to a free throw line, they'll walk over and address a kid. That's the way that stuff should be addressed. Liam Robbins is not the type of kid that's going to be out there making all types of gestures and stuff. He just did a gentle head tap, which and didn't say anything that I saw. And what I do, Chris, and I know you probably don't have time to do it, I'll rewind that stuff and watch it to see if I missed something. Because, when you watch stuff at real time, a lot of times you miss what's going on. And there was absolutely nothing to that. He just got fouled. In fact, when he first did it, I thought what he was gesturing for was that he caught where's the foul? That's what I thought. But at any rate, it was just a one step too far, in my opinion, for Jerry. But again, I almost understand it.
Yeah, and that was adding insult to injury. Not only did you get whistled for a technical, but if you call the foul in the first place, who knows? Maybe the seconds that came after go differently, and you're the one shooting free throws rather than the other team shooting six and getting the ball.
Yeah, it's just I see it. I saw it in several other basketball games I watch it. And I understand. I think basketball by far is the hardest game to officiate. I do. But I think there's so much anticipation of things and things that they look for that it's just wrong. Just officiate the game. Blow the whistle when you see something. Don't wait and think, or blow the whistle and then hope that it happens the way you think it's going to happen.
Yeah, big few games coming up. They're going to basically have to run the table, maybe go 4-1 between now and the start of the SEC season if there's going to be any postseason.
Yeah, I think you're talking about – I said first year, I think you and I may have discussed it. I discussed it with a friend. I had us going 18-13 or 17-14, and that meant 9 to 10 wins in the non-conference and then 8 or 9 wins in conference. When I look at the league, and I may be getting ahead of you here on some stuff, but I feel like we are as good as, on a given day, we're as good as Ole Miss, we're as good as Georgia, South Carolina. We can play with I think Missouri is fool's gold at 9-0. I've watched them play. They can run, they can score some points, but they don't defend anybody. So I think Missouri, when we get into conference play, that'll change. I may be wrong, but that's just my opinion. I've seen every team play except Texas A&M, and seen most of them play multiple games. As you can tell, I'm retired, Chris, so I get to do this. At any rate, I just think there's about 5 or 6 teams in this league that we can definitely be as good as or better. Scheduling's important. I think we get to play. Is it Georgia we play twice or Carolina we play twice?
I believe it is Carolina. It might be both. Let me double check.
Get them both twice. That's good. I think you can win 3 or 4 of those.
No, they get Georgia once and Carolina. Carolina is the worst team in the league. Here's the teams they get twice. They get Carolina. They get Tennessee, which is probably top 3 in my opinion. They get Kentucky twice, which Kentucky has been disappointing, but there's a lot of time left. I think that still may be the most talented team in the league. They get Alabama twice. Alabama is scary talented.
Oh, man, they are.
They get Florida twice. Florida's been a little bit of a disappointment to me so far. They could get one of those potentially. And then there's one more twice game in there, and I'm not spotting it.
I have it this way. I have the 5 teams in no certain order. Auburn, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky is the top 5 teams. That's the way I have it. And then I have our matchup. Florida was another one I was going to mention that we have a chance to, because matching up Castleton, we can match up their size with Castleton against Liam. So I like our matchup with Florida. I just think there's no one else outside those 5 that really scare you. I know Mississippi State and Missouri have started off really well, but again, I'm not so sure that they're as good as their record.
I think Mississippi State and Missouri are good teams, NCAA tournament teams right now. That could change. Mississippi State has got a lot of returning experience, and I didn't really know how that would go under a new coach and Chris Jans. Right now, it appears to be going really well. Not only stayed unbeaten, but it's got a couple of quality wins in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think Missouri, I really like Dennis Gates. I think he's a tremendous coach. They've got a lot of talent. He's been trying to send some discipline messages early. I think sitting a couple of his better guys for some time. You're right. The defense has been a train wreck, but they are scoring a lot of points, and he is – I mean, look what he did at Cleveland State. He did a phenomenal job there. The teams that I'm disappointed in are A&M and Florida. A&M, I had a sneaking suspicion A&M was a little bit overrated. That's kind of how it's played out so far. Although having said that, Buzz Williams, his teams always seem to peak later in the year, which they did a year ago, so I wouldn't write them off yet. But I was suspicious that they weren't as good as people thought. Lindy's even had them second in the league. I thought that was absurd. And in Florida, and a lot of Florida depends on Castleton and whether he gets the ball or not. He's had some 30-point games where he gets a lot of touches. Lately, he's been getting 6, 7, 8 shots a game, and they're a different team when that happens.
Right. Chris, every show I want to ask you a question, and this is getting back to Vanderbilt basketball. Help me understand one thing that I don't understand with our rotations. And I know he's still fiddling with it, but at some point you got to win games. Why is some games, you just randomly all of a sudden Ansong's not playing. He did play a little the other night. And then you see a Ben Coffin in the game. And then in one game, Noah Shelby sees the floor, and the next game he doesn't. What do you make of the random, this guy's going to play tonight but may not play the next 3 games, then he pops back up 3 games later?
Well, first of all, I'll find some humor here. If they're playing their director of football ops, then they're really in trouble.
What did I say? Ben
Coffin.
Oh, what is the Coffin? What's the kid's name? The walk-on.
Oh goodness, they've got a couple that play. They get Miles Keith. Miles Keith is one of them.
One of them is named Coffin. Probably said the first name, obviously wrong.
Yeah, let's see. Who are you?
It's Coffin.
Graham Carlton. Yes,
Graham Carlton. Carlton. I'm sorry.
That was pretty unintentional humor. I like it though.
But Graham, and then what happens there? What the randomness of all that?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
My fear for them coming in the year is they had more parts than really stud players. And I think that's what it is. I think when you've got parts fit differently one night to the next. Now, I think that Liam Robbins, and this is what I think Jerry's going to have to realize, Liam's their best player, hands down. I did not understand the starting the year on the bench thing that they did. He did that with Saban Lee his first year, too. I don't really know what that's about. And Jordan Wright is a guy who can really help. I don't think Jordan Wright was the go-to guy a lot of people wanted him to be. I just think that a lot of, when you're playing with Scottie Pippen Jr. as your point guard, things flow a lot differently. And they're finding that out this year. And the back thing does scare me because back injuries can be really tricky. I don't know if his is muscle or disc or whatever. I don't know if they've released the details of that, but that's a thing where, and it maybe it costs them a game or two here or there against an NC State or Pitt, but that's a thing that I sit him out if he's 90% because I worry about that popping back up, and they've got to have Jordan Wright healthy. I know it took a little bit of a detour there, but those are some thoughts.
No, I agree with you, and I got to be honest with you. If it's a disc type thing, this sport is the worst one to be playing when you're doing all the twisting and pivoting and that type of thing. Yeah, it's you could lose someone for the whole year if you bring them back too early.
This is bugging me. I've forgotten who the other team they play twice is. South Carolina's 1, Tennessee's 1, Alabama's 1, Kentucky is 1, and I cannot. Oh, Florida's the other one. Okay, so that is all 5.
Said Florida. Yeah.
So Yeah, I mean, look, Alabama is scary good. Kentucky, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky are all Final Four type teams. Florida, I don't know. South Carolina, that is absolutely the team in the league you want to play twice.
What's your feelings on Arkansas? I have them in that same group.
Oh, they're scary talented.
Yeah,
they've been playing mostly without Nick Smith, who's supposed to be their best player. Anthony Black, their other freshman point guard, is phenomenal. I'd think if I had Anthony Black, I don't know that I'd trade him for another guard in this league.
Well, I will say this. I think it's what's going to come down to, unless we just lose to Pitt, lose to NC State, and God forbid somebody else in the non-conference. If we don't lose both of those games, it's going to come down to going 8-10 or 9-9 in the league. And then come tournament time, we're going to have to win one or two in the SEC tournament. And I think then we'd be square in the bubble.
Ken Pomeroy has got them 14-17 overall and 6-12 in the league.
Right. That's what I figure most people would. But and we go back, we talk about this in football as well. Would you have thought our two SEC wins would have been against Kentucky and Florida? It's just like last year, we started out the SEC season winning at Arkansas. Did we think that was possible?
No.
So you don't know. We look at the schedule and we think this is the teams they have a chance to beat. And then you're going to wind up beating somebody you don't expect, and then you're going to lose to somebody you shouldn't. So that's the reason why I think 8-10 and 9-9 has got to be the benchmark for this team.
Let's say they run the table, go 5-0. They've only got to hit the road one time in that span. That puts them 9-4. And at that point, maybe they have a 10 or 15% shot to make the NCAA tournament. Go any less than that, and it really starts shrinking. But man, the opening to the season, after South Carolina, they go to Missouri, go to Tennessee, Arkansas here, and Alabama at home. In fact, they're favored by Ken Pom to beat South Carolina, and then they are underdogs in the next 8.
Well,
which they're not. I don't think they're going to go 1-9. Don't get me wrong,
right?
Or 1-8 or 1-7, whatever it is. But that is not an easy start to the season.
Well, and not only that, it all depends on Jordan Wright's health, and then if the things with Liam and his foul trouble and the not starting him type stuff. I have a little problem with that. I want to get off the rails just a bit here. I meant to say it a minute ago. I'm not a big believer. I know when someone gets 2 fouls, it's like they're gone for the whole half. You can get 2 fouls. To me.
Hey, Luke, you are preaching to the choir here. I mean, that it's you let the fear of this guy is not going to be playing become a self-fulfilling prophecy in real time.
Yeah, so basically what you're doing is saying, okay, the first half doesn't matter. We're going to have to win this game in the second half. Basketball doesn't work that way. You've got to, to me, I understand taking him out after the 2 fouls, let him think about it, get his bearings and free focus and try not to get the third one. But then after about the next 4-minute block, put him back in the game and then see how it works. I've seen many times when kids with 2 fouls go back in and don't get another foul the rest of the game. So, I feel like sometimes that's overblown, setting a kid for the whole half. And a lot of coaches do it. I'm not just saying Stackhouse. I see coaches do it every single game I watch. And I don't get that.
They are going to have to ride with Liam Robbins. There is almost no doubt about it in my mind. Like if he has an all-SEC type season, then maybe they sneak into the NIT. But I think without that, I just don't see a path.
Well, I think it's a little better than that, depending on Jordan Wright's health. If Jordan Wright doesn't come back and play like Jordan Wright did last year at the end of the season, then yeah, you're correct. But if Jordan does come back, that's not. And something else they got to do, I don't care if they have to set 4 screens every time they come down the street, set screens to get Miles Studi open. He's the best 3-point shooter I've seen, and he's the best in the league last year. Get him shots. Get the guy shots. He can fill it up. And why you don't just run plays designed just for him a lot more than they do, I don't understand that.
Back to one more thing before we hit the mailbag. Are we in agreement that Robbins is hands down their best player?
Oh, there's no question. I thought
Okay.
he was at Pippen.
Yeah, last year was hard to tell just because it felt like he was spending a lot of his time just getting back into basketball shape, and we didn't see we didn't. I wouldn't even call it peak Liam Robbins. We didn't see reasonably Liam Robbins, for lack of a better way to put it, most of last year.
I just think about how well he played against Dayton in that NIT game.
Yeah.
To me, that's Liam Robbins is, because by that time he was healthy. And if we could have kept playing, I think Liam was the type of kid could have led us to an NIT championship. I guess we lost a really close game to Xavier. So, Liam was the difference in that, I think. I mean, his block at the end of the game saved the game, basically.
Yeah, he went, let's see, 9, 14, 4, and 9 his last 4 games, the 9 being the last game at Xavier. He had 7 boards in that one. I guess that was his only blocked shot. Of course, he did lead the Big Ten in blocks 2 years ago, as everybody, I presume, knows.
I think he's going to be way up there in the SEC. I think he'll be one of the top 3 or 4, him and Sheboy and possibly Castleton.
All right, got a couple mailbag questions if you're ready.
Sure.
Okay, the mailbag is sponsored by Sutherland and Belk. As I scramble for my papers here, Sutherland and Belk is a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200, see what your rights are and if they can help. Dusty Orlean says, what will the portal tell us about Clark Lea's vision for the program? Interested is kind of an open-ended. Does it tell us guys not going to the portal or buying in, people leaving the portal or clearing house for more talent, Lee's ability to entice new transfers, etc.?
I think you just look at last year where we brought in Brammer and Ray Davis year before. I mean, I think you're going to see similar type thing numbers, maybe 5 transfers in. A lot of it will depend on if we lose more players than we anticipate. How a coach can anticipate if a kid's leaving, they probably have a pretty good feel right now of who's going to leave and who isn't. And I just feel like that our numbers are never going to be great in the transfer portal, but I think we'll just go by what we lose is how hard we hit the portal.
Yeah, I know this for a fact. There is some needed attrition. I also know they're not going to go just shopping for guys where they think they've got guys who can play, who have waited their turn in line for an opportunity. He's been developmental from the start. I think, and these are my words and not theirs, I think it sends the wrong message or it sends a message they don't want to send if they start recruiting over capable players who've waited their time to get their shot when other guys leave. Now, I know some fans aren't going to like the sound of that, and I get it, but I think it's always been a long-term culture build, and I do wonder, and you see this in baseball at particular schools a lot too, where guys sit and they're told, well, we've waited our time, and all of a sudden, it's your third or fourth year, and you've been behind an all-SEC guy, and bang, whatever playing time you thought you've earned by sitting and waiting patiently is gone when you cherry pick a kid who hits the portal from another school. And again, that's the way Tim Corbin has built his program too. And I get you can be under aggressive in the portal, but I know that's going to be their approach, is they want to be able to, I think, back up the promises they made to kids about waiting your time and earning your spot rather than just, wipe out 2 or 3 years of hard work in one fell swoop by signing a transfer.
I totally agree with that. And if they don't do it that way, then we're going to lose in the long run, because then you're going to have a lot more kids transferring out if you start doing that.
I'm really interested to see what happens to these programs in a year or two when a coach has made it clear time and time again that I don't really care what you've done, if we can get a player that's 5% better than you out of the portal, your butt's going to be on the bench. I just don't think that, and obviously there are degrees. It's more nuanced than just that, but I do wonder, how do you build culture at a program long term when it's always a revolving door and you're the guy sitting on the bench going, well, I think I've earned my time, but based on what's happened around me years before, am I just wasting my time knowing I'm about to be recruited over?
In my opinion, the guy you're talking about, whether you mean to be, is Lane Kiffin. I think he is a portal guy, but here's where I think Lane looks at it. I'm going to do it. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to jump ship anyway and stay ahead of the game, and I'll go somewhere else and do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot more coaches movement too with this portal stuff.
Well, you saw one today who's about to play in a bowl game, and I kind of don't blame the coaches for that, because you have an off year, or things don't start off exactly like you want to. You can have one good year, and if you backslide the next year, you're gone. If you're a coach, you almost always have to be looking for the better opportunity after you've been at a place 4 or 5 years, unless you're just absolutely killing it. I
agree with you. I think it's changed the entire landscape of the way college football is perceived and the way it's going to work for the next until, and I've said this before, at some point, I certainly hope that there's some type of cap on things with the NIL money, and there's some type of change in the way. And the COVID thing has also muddied the waters. Without the COVID play, so that's made it even more confusing. I hate it because you got kids that are coming out of high school that would be getting scholarships right now that aren't getting them.
Well, how much would we like to have a do-over just on the whole 2020 seasons? I mean, in every sport across the board.
Absolutely. From a Vanderbilt perspective, I think we may have had another College World Series in baseball, possibly.
Yeah.
And that's aggravating. But yeah, it's of course everybody was in the same boat, so it was what it was.
Last one, the awards. Lots of talk going on with the final college football playoff set and analyses of who would be in the eventual 12-team playoff. What's Luke's take on how the 12-team playoff was finalized? Do you feel like the 4 byes, or do you like that the 4 byes go to the highest-ranked conference champs?
Well, no, I don't think that. I mean, why would you change? Supposedly you're now saying the 4 best teams. Why would you change that? I don't know. But I don't think 12 is the number. I think it should have gone from 4 to 8, in my opinion. Why do you jump to 12 from 4? I don't know. I mean, like right now you would have a Florida State being in it now, a three-loss team possibly. I mean, if you lose 3 football games, now we're talking about stuff like the NFL where a team might get in at 8 and 9 as a playoff team. I just think it's wasting time. But again, it's all about money. So I wouldn't doubt if it doesn't expand further than 12 in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I like the 12. I like the fact that a Tulane or somebody else still has a pathway to get in. No, are they going to win any games? Probably not. But it's like your NCAA tournament moment, right? When you're Drake or somebody and have a once in every 30-year kind of season, and you get your name called, and everybody goes crazy, and you got the whole week to talk about it. You've got the whole year to think about, well, hey, what if we get an NCAA tournament and all that? I just think the build-up and the incentive is still important here, and I think it's – and look, for Vanderbilt too. I mean, go back under James Franklin, Vanderbilt wasn't far off from – pulling an upset here or there, and maybe you're one of those teams that gets in the playoff. Now, that's probably a stretch, but my point is I like to incentivize everybody. And right now, you just get to November, and you got 8 teams that have got something to play for, and a couple of them are fool's gold, and you got an Alabama that lost a couple of games on last-second plays. I just like the movement towards the 12 and all that comes with it a lot more than I do what we have now.
It's funny. I think back to, and I'm such an old man, but I don't know if people remember this, but in 1982, Vanderbilt came as close as they've ever come to going to the Sugar Bowl. We lost to Georgia, and we were leading going into the fourth quarter and lost to Georgia. If we win that game, Vanderbilt would have been in the Sugar Bowl, because back then they took who had not been the longest. So obviously that would have been Vanderbilt, because we would have been tied and would have gone to the Sugar Bowl. I think, wow, a day like that would be great. So what you're speaking of here, allowing a Vanderbilt to be in the mix, would be tremendous for our fan base.
Yeah, and look, that's a stretch. Maybe Missouri would be a better example, when Missouri, got in the league and won the East a couple of times. But it gives most teams something that they can make every few years without, having to squint too hard.
Let me ask you this, Chris. I only watched the top 4 last night. I haven't looked at the top 25 on the final. Was Tulane even in the top 12? I thought they were like 16.
Let me look it up. I think don't they have an exemption that the top ranked non-Power 5 gets in?
Maybe, I don't know. If that's the case, then they would definitely be in. But I know national ranking still had them like 15th or 16th.
Yeah, let's see where the playoffs settled. Tulane was 16.
Yeah, I mean, to me, how do you have others? There's a lot of teams I think they could beat that are above them.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to see one for sure. By the way, they were one spot above LSU. How ironic is that?
I like that.
South Carolina was 19. For what it's worth, Mississippi State 22. Troy was also in there at 24. Troy went 11-2, followed by UTSA, which also went 11-2.
Yeah, Troy toward the end of the year in the last few games are putting up some incredible numbers offensively.
Troy lost its opener to Ole Miss and then lost one more the rest of the year. I think their coach was in his first or second year there. I think it's John Sumrall. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, well, that's it for the mailbag. Any other parting thoughts before we end the show today?
Would like to say something to the board and to the fans about Wednesday night. The game against Pitt's at 8 o'clock. I don't know if Vanderbilt's even put this out there, but they're going to be honoring the 88 team that went to the Sweet 16 with Will Perdue, Barry Goheen, Steve Reese. Some of those guys will all be coming back, Scott Dowd. So if you weren't planning on coming to the game, come to that one. You can see those guys get, I guess, honored is the way you put it. But anyway, that's supposed to go on Wednesday night.
Luke, thanks for joining us. We'll catch you again next Monday, hopefully.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk, Michael Kendrick of the Kendrick Group, and myperfectfranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrisley70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.